Hi, Sameep. Welcome to You're Not Alone Conversations.
Hi, Gitika. Thank you so much. And it's an honor and a pleasure to be a part of your session and a great initiative that you've started. I was lucky to go through all your videos before I joined today. And honestly, it is an eye opener for most of us who, are there on Instagram and the youth. There's so much to learn for everybody from each story. So thank you so much for starting such a great
No,
initiative.
thank you so much. That means a lot to me. Also, because all the stories that are being shared in every episode is unique, just like yours is going to be today as well. And I think everyone out there only sees like the front we show to the public, but You're Not Alone Conversations tries to talk about the personal side. So people can actually relate and be like, oh, everything's not as glamorous on the outside and everything's not hunky dory all the time. But
Right.
thank you again so much for doing this. I know you've been very busy. You've been busy with the elections that have also been going on. So, before we delve into the topic of legacy, I just wanted to ask you, how is it for you to be a politician and be going around and being part of the election rallies? Because in the media we see all these politicians being swarmed by people all the time, and like you're just trying to walk through with a smile. So is it always that exciting, or
Uh, Okay, frankly, it's a bit of an emotional thing. You really get mesmerized with the kind of love that you get because primarily for me, because of the legacy, the love that they have for my
Mhm.
grandfather. But then you understand the basic emotion of the heart of India, what the reality is, what the problem is, and you really feel so privileged to be a part of this, metropolitan life. There are basic problems like sanitation still is an issue, electricity still is an issue, water still is an issue, and it sometimes it gets really difficult to address such issues, and with so many people around you just discussing about hurdles of their life, and they really think that you are one of those who will help them out, and you want to be that person and that leader. But somehow, when you get back home and after that entire hustle bustle, then everything goes quiet for 5 years. And it's very sad. But the kind of energy that leadership, start the campaigning with, there are very few leaders across India who actually continue with that kind of efforts all throughout the 5 years of the tenure. So I really think that, it's a difficult task
that's very.
and a very
I can,
emotional journey. Very emotional
because
journey.
we see it happening on our TV screens and on our social media screens, but I'm sure the ground reality of it all is much tougher to deal with. And, it all looks like, oh, you're just being led through the crowd. But I'm fairly certain it's a very stressful and impactful thing for you as well. But talking about great leaders, I'm going to go to the topic of legacy, which your grandfather, our former Prime Minister of India, has left behind. I mean, nowhere on the internet have I read a single bad thing about him. I spoke to people from like my parents' generation, and nobody has anything bad to say about him. He's left behind a legacy which is, an inspiration to most of our leaders nowadays as well. How has it been for you to be a part of that legacy and also to be able to keep up to that legacy?
Honestly, sometimes I wonder, how can a person or a human being be so great that there is nothing negative about him? Being very honest about it. Like, when you're reading all throughout your childhood, you're just hearing, yeah, he's a man of honesty. He was the Iron Man of India, and he's like the man who could lead by principles and everything. And everything is so positive.
Hmm.
Then you start thinking when you grow up that how is it that possible? It's not humanly possible that someone did not go wrong. And then there are stories that all of us hear stories about Mahabharata, Ramayana. For me, it was lot of stories about him.
Hmm.
There was a time where India was importing just after independence and when he became the prime minister, they were importing low grade wheat,
Hmm.
and that wheat was not good enough for human consumption. So he tested the philosophy of fasting for a week with his own family, and then he announced it to India. And India actually started fasting for a month. Every Monday they started fasting, and that's how we overcame that entire problem. And then Green Revolution and White Revolution started. Initiation was done
Hmm.
by him. So he was a man with vision, and he was a man who actually had grown from that basic, what do you call a low, from he was the real true son
True.
of India. He had seen that problem. He used to swim to his school. So many stories. He had that ethics that he, on a railway accident, he resigned. That's such a big story in itself,
Right.
right? So, so there are very few people before doing something, before preaching something, they do it
Hmm.
themselves. So that is something that he actually did. Everything what he did in his life, or whatever principles or policies that he made sure that one, that he would try and test it on his family if it's required, and second, he'll
Hmm.
stand by it. So that is what a man he was, and living up to his expectation. When people meet me, the I'm the third generation. Like, it should dissolve, right? Like, that aura should dissolve,
Yeah.
right? But it is unbelievable. You go to if you go to more inner states of Haryana, there are small villages near Fatehabad, Hisar. More than 80% houses have Jai Jawan, Jai Kisan slogan written on their front wall, and most of them have his picture in the temple as a
Oh,
god. So it is unbelievable, the kind of respect. And I went to Punjab, Amritsar. So all the belts where the farmers were there, they're so attached, they're so emotionally attached. There have been incidents where people who are aged like 80, 85, or whatever their age is, they have just touched my feet just because I'm from that family.
hmm.
So, I really can't explain by words what you feel, and living up to that is the most difficult task, because we have grown up in a very different environment. We were the gifted generation who had all the required things, materialistically, physically, emotionally. Everything was fulfilled
True.
for us. So it's very difficult to live up to a man who did not have anything and grew to that position, and then someone who has everything and then try to live up to that expectation. It's very, very difficult, and needs are
I'm
very
sure.
different. His needs were very
Hmm.
basic. There was a incident, when my grandmother was fighting with him, that you didn't give time to the family. So he sat down, because if you ever get a chance, I'll request you to go visit the memorial, which is next to 10 Janpat. So there are two rooms attached. So the main master
Hmm.
bedroom, where Dadi Ma used to sleep, and there was a small outer room where he used to sleep
Right.
separately. And Dadima really used to get frustrated. You sleep separately, you want to do everything separately. And then once he sat down, he told her, you know what? The six children that you have is your
Hmm.
family. And the rest that you see outside these walls is my
Hmm.
family.
Hmm.
So I have to be there for them, and I need to do that. So he was very, very dedicated towards serving the nation.
True.
There was an incident when one of my uncles took his official
Hmm.
car, and he made sure that the kilometers that were run on
Hmm.
personal, uh, he got it deducted from his prime minister's
Hmm.
salary. And then that is when the family forced him to buy a car, and that too was on a loan from PNB Bank. So imagine, a prime minister did not have enough money to buy a car
I
as well.
remember. I
So
remember seeing that online.
So, you know, there are very few people like him, and it's very, very difficult to live up to the expectations that people have from us. But yes, I can, what I can promise to them is that whosoever in our family, and especially me, whenever we serve, we tend to serve with transparency and try to do our best and live up to all the best ethical ways and honesty that is possible. That's what we try to
But I
do.
mean, like you said, everywhere I read, he was known as the people's prime minister, and I don't think there's been any other leader who has been able to keep up to that. So I can understand the pressure that you're on, and it's nice to hear that you want to follow those footsteps and lead a transparent life, or at least lead a life where transparency is priority for you. Because I know in our country, we're all looking for that information, that transparency, to know that we're being looked after as well. And something that you mentioned about your grandmother. So I had an earlier conversation with Tara Bhattacharya Gandhi, who is granddaughter
Mm-hmm.
of Gandhiji. And that
Right.
you also brought up your grandmother, because people fail to sort of see how important the partners and the wives of these great leaders have been. And I'm sure your grandmother was a super support, because without her support, I doubt he would have been able to, go out there and take care of the other children, as you said, the other people and his other family the way he did. And the third point, which I do want to ask you about, is the fact that you brought up with the generations, that pressure hasn't gone, the limelight from you hasn't gone away, the pressures of the Shastri surname has not gone away. But do you think that, and this is just out of curiosity, do you think your parents and your father may have had more pressure than you do, or do you think?
I'm sure they had more pressure because they lived that times and they were with him. And uh, frankly, my father didn't join politics. He was a corporate person. So, but other three uncles, that they all were part of Congress party, and they had respective portfolios as well. When they had become ministers in their life. And but the kind of pressure still that they, because two of my uncles are still there, and the kind of pressure still that they face, there are like hundreds of people every day coming up to them with some or the other problem. In spite of they're not in power, but they still have that hope in their eyes that if Shastriji's son writes to someone, the work will be
Right.
done, and that's the kind of legacy that he's left with for us. So, and honestly, it has actually worked. Especially during the COVID
Hmm.
times, you'll not believe I was able to help so many other people. We helped in somewhere around 622 districts through my various organizations, providing bed, medicines,
Right.
everything. And every single time I called up a district magistrate or any hospital or a CMO, the kind of response that they had, and they immediately made sure that a reference call from X has come, so we will make sure. For them, I'm nobody. It's just the love for Shastriji that they made
Mm.
sure that those people were helped. So I frankly feel we are very blessed that we are able to still pass on his greatness to
Mm.
others, and we are trying to make the way. And we all I want to say in this is that the pressure will never decrease, because the kind of man he
Mm.
was, I think even my son will face a similar kind of pressure, because people will have some kind of expectation to serve the society, probably not politically, but serve the society in whatever manner, probably have an NGO or whatever he wants to do or wants to be a part of. But I'm sure there will be pressure, and I'm sure he will serve the society some way or
Right.
the other.
So, in one of our previous conversations as well, we touched upon the fact that when someone in your family, especially when it's your father or your grandfather, has, created this amazing legacy for the family. Of course, yours is at a very, very different and a higher level, but at the end of the day, family is still family, right? So, they also felt the pressures of um, the legacy, and they did feel stressed out sometimes, and bogged down because of that legacy. But, they were trying to create their own sort of identity as well, which I think it's very hard. It's not easy to create your own identity. But you, of course, I know that, you're working with so many organizations, you're chairing some of them, you're vice president and you're president for BRICS as well, BRICS Young Leader, if I'm not mistaken.
Right,
So
right.
has that been easy for you to create your own legacy as well? Because of course you have got a surname and you do have a legacy to follow. And
So there,
yeah, yeah, go.
see, you're always protected by that
Hmm.
shadow. You call it nepotism, you call it anything. The first level entry might be easy. You might be able to meet the
Hmm.
person. But in my
Hmm.
generation, yes, the door might get open to meet the person, but to make sure that work happens, that you have to have that caliber in, you have to show that you can do something, right? Our generation is definitely the privileged one, but then also at a loss that if you cannot prove your mettle, nobody is going to acknowledge you, right? So it's, and there have been so many other families, chief ministers' families, and other prime ministers' family. Frankly, except for Gandhi's and our family, I don't think any other family that I know of that the third or the fourth generation, are well recognized or not are doing something. Like there's somewhere there, but yes, they've not made it till now. But I feel that one should actually. I think it's the most difficult task to, if you have a legacy, to make your own identity, because people tend to expect something out of you, which probably would not be your forte, or you don't want to do that, right? It's not necessary that everyone, like we are 9 cousins, 9 brothers, and everyone is not into politics. Some are corporate heads and some have their own businesses. So, but the kind of pressure they also feel is the same. Everyone around them keeps asking them, when are you contesting? Why are you not joining a political party? Why everybody has that kind of expectation from you that, oh, and I think it's the sad mentality of our country that most of us think ki doctor ka beta doctor banega, and engineer's son will become an engineer, and political son, MP's son will become an MP. And it is very, very sad. It's not necessary. An MP son probably wants to be a investment banker, for God's sake. But why would you just want him to, just because his father has been serving or his grandfather has been serving? So I think that mentality is really there, and some of that puts a pressure on your decision making. For me, it was very difficult as well, when as a child and then during my college days, you are really hot-blooded and you really think, oh yes, I can make it, I want to be into politics, and you want to do this, and you want to make money as well, so you want to do multiple things. And then you realize, later when you start aging, and then you realize that yes, you need to have focus in life, and if there are things that you want to do towards the society, there are other ways to do it, and that's how you start opting for those options.
That's true. That's very true. And coming out of the shadow is not easy. And you are very right in saying that society keeps expecting you to do exactly what the person who set a great example for you to do as well. Like for me, I keep getting asked UPSC kyun nahi diya, because my mom's a diplomat, so they're like UPSC the interested in the government services. But no, you're absolutely right. It's just how it is, and I hope people know from this conversation that they're not alone in being asked if they're going to be following their fathers or their grandparents' legacy and footsteps into a certain profession. But Sameep, thank you so much. This has been a lovely conversation and absolutely inspiring to a certain degree, because we see politicians on the screen, we hear about it in the media, we hear a very PRE aspect to it. This is the first time, I think, at least for me, and I hope for some of our viewers as well, that they've actually seen a very personal side to a political family. And I truly hope that people get inspired, and people also know that they're not alone in what they're going through, that the pressures and the stress they feel about their legacies, they're not the only ones going through it as well. And I hope that helps them cope with their issues a little.
Thank you so much, Geetika, once again for giving such a beautiful platform to speak my heart out and then comfortably, just be what I am. And I also want to know later on why you didn't do it, get into UPSC.
I don't have the knack at all. Like, I couldn't see government. Though I think the people in the government, hats off to them. They're just...
Hats off to them. They work 24/7. People just say that Sarkari Babus don't work and they're very lazy. That's not true. And you look at the diplomats, the kind of response they had for Ukraine right now, the way students were brought in, the 24/7, the kind of legwork that they do is unbelievable. And it's been happening not now. It's just been happening for 6 years. It's just being told by media now.
And it really irritates me sometimes that people are like, oh, इन लोगों ने like they must be corrupted, they must have taken a bribe, and they're not doing anything. In the case of Ukraine, I know embassies work 24/7. I know they really put in their hearts. They're not going to abandon anyone. But the amount of flack they got because they weren't able to get everyone out at once was just ridiculous. But I agree. And I know politicians work as well. And I know you do as well for sure for the people that you are going to be serving. And congratulations for the win, by the way.
Thank you so much. And once again, thank you for inviting me. Looking forward for more sessions like this and hearing more from other
I
people. I'll be following this, this season continuously and hearing more.
a
Thank you
lot.
so
Thank
much.
you, Sameep,
Pleasure.
and thank you everyone for
All
joining us
right.
today. We
Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you all.
bye. Take care.